welcome to Talk Tickers.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so normally on this show, we're heavily focused on summarizing earnings calls, right?
Right, getting deep into the quarterly financials.
Exactly. But today, we are doing a deep dive into something that is basically a massive bleeding wound on the balance sheets of almost every financial institution we cover.
It really is. It's an operational nightmare.
Right, and it's something that affects you, the listener, directly. We are talking about identity verification.
And specifically how completely broken it is right now.
Yeah, totally broken. We're going to explore how a really radical shift in technology could completely rewrite the rules of global finance and portfolio risk.
Because right now, financial institutions are just hemorrhaging money on compliance.
And consumers, you guys, are constantly exposed to these massive data breaches. So I want you to imagine for a second, just imagine that every single time you wanted to move to a new city, you couldn't just, pack up your belongings and hire a moving truck.
That would be too easy.
Right. Imagine instead, you were legally mandated to build a brand new house from scratch in the new city.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And not only that, but you had to leave an exact replica of all your most valuable possessions, like your birth certificate, your financial records, your passport.
Just leave them in the old house.
Exactly. In every single town you have ever lived in.
Right.
You just leave them sitting there in these replica houses guarded by, whatever local security the town happens to hire.
Just hoping nobody breaks the windows.
Right.
I mean, when you put it in physical terms like that, the absurdity of it is just immediately apparent.
It's crazy, right?
Completely. You'd have dozens of these vaults scattered across the country, and you would spend your whole life constantly wondering which one of those replica houses was going to get broken into next.
Right. Wondering if the security guard was actually awake at the wheel.
Exactly. But, that is precisely the architecture of our modern digital financial system.
It really is. So to give you a quick summary before we get into the weeds, traditional Know Your Customer processes, or KYC, are fundamentally broken.
They're completely centralized and incredibly expensive.
Right. And what we are looking at today is the alternative, decentralized identity, or DID, and verifiable credentials, VCs.
Which offer this entirely new paradigm. The mantra is basically collect once, verify often.
Collect once, verify often.
Yeah.
Love that. It allows users to hold their own encrypted identity attributes and prove them to institutions without handing over the actual sensitive underlying data.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack all of this. We are going to break down how traditional KYC works, why it fails so spectacularly, and then look at the architecture of decentralized identifier.
And the math behind it, right?
Right. The cryptography making it possible, specifically zero-knowledge proofs.
Which sounds like sci-fi, but is actually very real.
Very real. And then we'll get into the regulatory hurdles and what this all means for capital markets and financial infrastructure.
Okay, so to really understand the elegance of the solution, we first have to understand the sheer scale of the problem.
And the problem is massive.
Right. It is grading bank balance sheets. Let's talk about the economics and the failures of traditional KYC.
Well, the financial toll is staggering. To understand why a bank spends so much money just figuring out who its customers are, you really have to look at the mechanics of the 3 stages of KYC.
Okay. Lay it out for us. What's stage 1?
Stage 1 is the Customer Identification Program, or CIP.
CIP. Got it.
This is the foundational layer. A financial institution is legally required to collect the core 4 pieces of information.
Right. I think we all know these.
Yeah, it's your full name, your date of birth, your physical address, and your taxpayer ID, like a social security number.
Right. So this is the part we're all super familiar with. You open a new brokerage app on your phone and you spend 10 minutes typing that stuff in.
And it feels like just a minor annoyance to the user.
Yeah, just a hoop to jump through.
Right, but for the institution, that is just the tip of the iceberg, because once they have that data, they have to move to the second stage, which is customer due diligence, or CDD.
And this is where it gets expensive.
Very. This is where the institution has to evaluate your specific risk profile. They have to actually verify the documents you submitted during the CIP stage.
So they aren't just taking your word for it.
Oh, absolutely not. They are querying third-party data brokers. They are cross-referencing global watch lists.
Like sanctions lists and things like that.
Exactly. They are checking the validity of the ID format itself, assessing if your stated profession matches the volume of transactions you are trying to make.
Oh, interesting. So they are actively building a risk matrix around you.
Precisely. And if you trigger something in that matrix, well, that's when things get really bogged down.
Like what? What would trigger it?
Say you do a lot of international wire transfers, or maybe you are a politically exposed person.
Oh, okay.
If that happens, you get bumped to the final stage, which is enhanced due diligence, or EDD.
EDD. And what does that entail?
Deep continuous monitoring. For high-risk accounts, institutions are specifically looking for complex indicators of money laundering or terrorism financing.
So this isn't just an automated computer check anymore.
No, not at all. This requires actual human investigators, compliance officers sitting at desks doing massive amounts of manual review.
Wow.
Yeah. Parsing through transaction histories, unraveling corporate ownership structures, verifying source of wealth documentation.
I can't even imagine what that costs. Let's actually look at the hard numbers, because the economics of executing these 3 stages are just brutal.
They really are.
Okay, so it costs a financial institution anywhere between $13 and $130 to KYC a single retail customer.
Just for one average person.
Right. But if you're dealing with corporate clients, it skyrockets. It costs between $1,500 and $3,500 per review.
Per single review. And remember, that is an ongoing requirement.
That is insane.
Well, the multiplier effect here is what destroys the balance sheets. When you factor in millions of retail customers and thousands of corporate clients, the average mid-size to large bank is spending around $60 million annually strictly on KYC.
$60 million just to figure out who is using their bank.
Exactly. And it's hitting the newer players even harder. Fintech firms are routinely allocating up to 15% of their total operating budgets just to meet these baseline compliance requirements.
15% of your budget just to get people in the door.
Yeah, it is a massive capital drain, and it produces zero actual product value for the customer.
And it's not just the money, right? The time drag is a huge issue.
Oh, the operational friction is immense.
Because time is money, especially in capital markets. I mean, corporate onboarding averages 21 to 30 days.
Best case scenario.
Right. And sometimes it can take up to 180 days.
Half a year.
Yeah, half a year just to open an account. That kind of friction completely kills deal flow and user acquisition.
Imagine telling a massive corporate client they have to wait 6 months to deploy their capital because the back office is still manually checking their beneficial ownership history.
It's embarrassing, honestly.
It is. But as bad as the operational friction is, the secondary consequence of this system is far more dangerous.
You mean the honeypot problem?
Exactly. Because every single institution has to perform these CDD and EDD checks independently. Every institution is basically forced to hoard this data.
Right. They're all building their own separate vaults.
Yes, massive centralized databases storing your passport scans, your social security number, your transaction history.
And those centralized databases become highly lucrative targets for cybercriminals.
That is the definition of a honeypot in cybersecurity.
Which brings us right back to that analogy of the replica houses.
Exactly.
Every time you open a bank account or sign up for a crypto exchange or apply for a mortgage, you are creating a new honeypot. You are leaving copies of your most valuable digital possessions in every town you ever lived in.
And the history of these centralized vaults failing is, it's extensive.
It's terrifying. Look at the concrete examples we have. The Equifax breach compromised the data of 147.9 million people.
Just massive scale.
And the T-Mobile breach hit 37 million people.
And those breaches aren't just embarrassing PR disasters for the companies. They directly fuel the epidemics of synthetic identity fraud and account takeovers.
Which costs actual money.
Oh, global losses to identity theft and digital fraud now exceed $42 billion annually.
$42 billion?
Yes. The current architecture forces financial institutions to act as massive data custodians. Entities that were designed to manage risk and allocate capital are essentially being asked to be top-tier cybersecurity firms.
And they are fundamentally ill-equipped for that role.
Completely. And it results in direct financial losses and severe reputational damage.
And look, beyond the financial fraud, there are historical realities about how centralized identity data can be weaponized.
That's a very important point.
And I want to be clear to you listening, we aren't taking any political sides here. We strictly want to report the historical facts regarding data silos. But if you look back at the 2016 election cycle, the Cambridge Analytica data misuse is a factual example of how centralized profile data can be harvested and weaponized at scale.
Right. It shows the vulnerability of pooling all that data in one place.
Exactly. And on a geopolitical level, We saw financial transaction data utilized by state authorities in Xinjiang to track and monitor the Uyghur Muslim population based on their purchasing habits.
Right.
So massive centralized data silos don't just present a financial risk, they present profound societal vulnerabilities.
They do, and the structural flaw beneath all of this, the reason we are in this mess, is what we call a bidirectional trust model.
Bidirectional trust. Unpack that for us.
Sure. Under the current system, the individual has to trust the institution to hold their data securely and not misuse it.
Right. I trust the bank not to lose my passport scan.
Exactly. But simultaneously, the institution has to trust that the data the individual provides is actually authentic.
So trust has to flow both ways.
Yes, and this mandatory two-way street is what forces the continuous hoarding and transmitting of raw data.
So what's the alternative?
The alternative we are looking at today dismantles this entirely. It shifts everything to a unidirectional trust model through the architecture of decentralized identity.
Okay, unidirectional trust. This is where we pivot to the actual solution. How do we move away from these honeypots? How do I build a system where a bank knows who I am without actually holding my data?
Well, the absolute foundation of this new architecture is the decentralized identifier, or the DID framework.
A DID. How is that different from, say, a social security number?
It is fundamentally different. Think about your social security number, or your email address, or your passport number. Those are all issued, controlled, and can be completely revoked by a central authority.
Right. The government or Google controls them, not me.
Exactly. But the syntax of a DID operates independently of any centralized registry. It's actually a simple text string, a URI that looks like this: did, method, specific identifier.
Wait, okay, did, method, specific identifier.
Yes. And the critical innovation is that it is mathematically generated and operates entirely without essential certificate authority.
Okay, so let's clearly define the ecosystem here for the listener. There are three main players, right?
Yes, three main components.
The deed subject, the DD controller, and the verifiable data registry.
Right. So the DD subject is simply the person or entity that the identifier refers to.
So that could be me or a company.
Or even an IoT device, yeah. Then you have the DD controller. This is the entity that holds the cryptographic capability, meaning the private keys, to make changes to the DID document.
Okay, and in a true self-sovereign model, the subject and the controller were the same person.
Exactly. You are the subject and you hold your own keys.
Which is huge.
And
the third piece,
the verifiable data registry. This is the underlying decentralized network, like a distributed ledger or a blockchain, where the public cryptographic keys are anchored.
Got it. Okay, so this architecture is what enables verifiable credentials, or VCs, to exist securely inside your digital wallet.
Yes, and VCs are the heart of the collect once, verify often model.
Okay, so walk me through how a VC works in practice.
Sure. Under this paradigm, an institution, let's say a highly regulated bank acting as the issuer, verifies your info one single time.
So they do the heavy, expensive KYC lifting we talked about earlier.
Right. They do the CIP, the CDD. But once they are satisfied, instead of just keeping that info in their database, they issue a verifiable credential to a digital wallet on your phone.
And this VC is essentially a cryptographically sealed wrapper.
Right. Exactly. It's a sealed wrapper containing your verified attributes. And that cryptographic wrapper is what completely changes the game.
Because of what happens next.
Right. Say 6 months later, you go to a second institution, maybe a different bank or a mortgage lender. We will call them the verifier.
Yeah.
Instead of handing over your raw documents all over again and waiting days for their compliance team, you simply present the VC from your wallet.
And the verifier just checks it.
The verifier checks the digital signature attached to that VC against the decentralized ledger.
Using the verifiable data registry we mentioned.
Yes. And the public ledger mathematically proves two things instantly. First, that the original issuer's signature is valid.
Meaning the first bank really did issue it.
Yes. And second, that the data inside the wrapper has not been tampered with since the exact moment it was issued.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Please do.
If I am using an app on my phone to log into a service and verify my identity, aren't we just reinventing federated identity systems?
What do you mean?
Well, like when I click login with Google on a website, or I use Sammy Allen OIF for my corporate single sign-on at work, I'm essentially doing the same thing, right? I verify my identity with Google once, and I use that to log into 100 different websites. How is a DID actually different?
The user experience might feel very similar, but the plumbing underneath is radically different. And it all comes back to trust models. SAML and OAuth rely on bidirectional trust.
Okay, how so?
When you click login with Google on a news website, Google, who is the identity provider, and the news website, the service provider, have to establish a direct communication link. They literally talk to each other to authenticate you.
Oh, right. Meaning Google knows exactly when I log in, what site I am logging into, and how often I visit it.
Exactly. They are sitting right in the middle of every transaction, acting like a surveillance camera.
Which creates another massive data honeypot of my browsing habit.
Precisely. Decentralized identity, however, relies on unidirectional trust.
Meaning it only goes one way.
Right. In the DID model, the verifier trusts the issuer's cryptographic signature, but the issuer has absolutely no idea where, when, or how you're presenting your credential.
Because there's no direct communication link.
Exactly. Your digital wallet acts as an absolute barrier. It breaks the communication link between the issuer and the verifier.
So the original bank signs my credential, hands it to my wallet, and their involvement is entirely over.
Yep. You, the user, are at the absolute center of the data flow.
That is a massive shift in power. But wait, I have another question about this.
Go ahead.
If I am handing over a verifiable credential to a new mortgage lender, that credential still contains my data, right?
Yes, the wrapper holds the data.
So if the wrapper holds my name, my address, and my date of birth, hasn't the new lender just extracted my data to create another honeypot on their own servers? Even if the original bank doesn't know about it, I'm still giving them my data.
That is the crucial bottleneck, and overcoming it requires integrating an incredibly advanced cryptographic engine into these credentials.
Okay, here we go. The math.
The math. We are talking about zero-knowledge proofs, or ZKPs. This is what makes true, scalable privacy actually possible.
Zero-knowledge proofs. It really does sound like deep sci-fi.
It does, but the foundational math was actually conceived at MIT back in 1985.
Oh, 1985. So what exactly is it?
The underlying concept is profound. A zero-knowledge proof is a cryptographic method that allows one party, the prover, to convince another party, the verifier, that a specific statement is mathematically true.
Okay.
But here's the magic part. You prove it without revealing any actual data beyond the simple truth of the statement itself.
Okay, so you're proving something is true without showing the work, basically. Let's use the Where's Waldo analogy because I think it perfectly visualizes this concept for the listener.
It's the best way to explain it.
Yeah. So imagine you and I are looking at a massive, incredibly complex Where's Waldo book.
Right.
And I claim to you that I know exactly where Waldo is on the page, but I refuse to point it out to you because I don't want to ruin the puzzle for you.
But I need you to prove it.
Right. How do I prove that I know his location without revealing his coordinates to you?
What do you do?
Well, I take a massive piece of black cardboard, much larger than the book itself, and I cut a tiny Waldo-sized hole in it.
Just big enough for his face.
Exactly. Then I place the cardboard over the book so that only Waldo is visible through that tiny hole. You can look through the hole and see Waldo, so you have absolute proof that I found him.
I know you weren't lying.
Right. But because the black cardboard obscures the edges of the book and the rest of the scene, you have zero knowledge of his actual coordinates on the page. You still don't know where he is in the big picture.
It's a brilliant analogy because it perfectly illustrates the three mathematical pillars that every single ZKP must satisfy.
Okay, what are the three pillars?
First is completeness. This means if the statement is true, an honest prover will always be able to convince an honest verifier.
So you will always be able to align Waldo with the whole.
Exactly. Second is soundness. If the statement is false, a cheating prover cannot convince the verifier.
You cannot fake Waldo's face through the hole.
Right. And the third pillar is zero knowledge. The verifier learns absolutely nothing else about the underlying data.
You don't see the rest of the page. But, you know, the Waldo example requires us to be in the same physical room, interacting with each other. How does this work on a global digital scale across the internet?
That's a great question. Early ZKPs were interactive. They required a continuous back and forth interrogation between the prover and the verifier to establish that mathematical certainty.
Like 20 questions.
Sort of, yeah. But modern blockchain and DD systems rely on non-interactive ZKPs.
Non-interactive.
Yes. Through advanced cryptography, often utilizing shared public parameters or really complex polynomial equations, the prover can generate a single, universally verifiable mathematical proof.
So I just hand you the finished math.
Exactly. They hand you that proof, and you can verify it instantly at any time without needing a live, ongoing connection to the prover. This is what allows the technology to actually scale across massive decentralized networks.
Okay, so applying this to finance and KYC is where the real magic
And
happens.
it changes everything.
Think about the last time you bought a house or applied for a complex loan. Think of the mountain of sensitive PDFs you had to send. Bank statements, tax returns, passport scans.
Just emailing them to a mortgage broker.
Yeah, which is terrifying. But in a system powered by zero-knowledge proofs, you don't send PDFs. Your digital wallet generates a mathematical proof derived from your verifiable credentials.
Right.
You prove the statement, I am a citizen, or I am over 18, or I am not on an OFAC sanctions list.
And the bank receives the proof, they run the math, and they get a green check mark.
But they never learn my actual birth date, and my raw PDFs never leave my hard drive.
Never. The structural impact of this is that it forces a massive shift from identity verification to attribute verification.
Attribute verification.
Yes. Financial institutions really only need to know what they are legally entitled to know to manage risk.
Right. If the law requires a bank to ensure I am not a sanctioned individual, they don't actually need to read my entire life story.
They just need cryptographic proof of your non-sanctioned status. This aggressively mitigates the overcollection of data. It effectively eliminates the honeypot risk we discussed earlier.
Because there's no data to steal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If a bank using ZKPs is ever hacked, the cybercriminals don't find a database full of names and social security numbers. They just find a database full of mathematical proof that say user A is over 18 and user B makes over $100,000 a year.
And that abstract math is entirely useless to a hacker.
Completely useless.
Wow. And there's another layer of cryptography we can add to this, right? Called multi-party computation, or MPC.
Yes, MPC is fascinating. It takes this privacy-preserving math and applies it to collaborative analytics.
Okay, how so?
It allows multiple institutions to jointly compute an output using their private inputs without ever exposing those inputs to each other.
So they can do maths together without showing each other their numbers.
Exactly.
Let's use the chef's analogy here. Imagine 3 different chefs who all want to know the average salary among the 3 of them. But none of them are willing to reveal their own actual salary to the other 2 because that's awkward.
Right.
Using MPC, they can input their individual salaries into a cryptographic function. The function calculates the exact average and spits it out without any chef ever seeing the individual pay stubs of the others.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. Now apply that to capital markets. Imagine 3 major banks trying to detect complex cross-institution money laundering.
Which happens all the time.
Constantly. A sophisticated bad actor might structure their transactions across Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C to purposefully stay under the reporting thresholds at each individual institution.
So no single bank sees the full picture.
Right. But with MPC, those 3 banks can pool their encrypted client data, run a shared risk algorithm, and generate a unified risk score.
Oh, wow.
They can detect the overarching money laundering pattern across all 3 banks. But none of the banks ever see the proprietary client lists or raw transaction data of their competitors.
They share the intelligence without sharing the underlying data.
Exactly. It's revolutionary for AML compliance.
It really is. So DIDs, ZKPs, and MPC represent this incredibly powerful technological engine.
The tech is there.
But dropping this software into a legacy bank isn't just a simple software upgrade, is it?
Not at all. It requires the entire financial industry to accept 3 massive structural paradigm shifts in how they conceptualize identity, risk, and compliance.
Okay, let's walk through those 3 paradigm shifts. What's the first one?
The first necessary shift is moving from siloed documentation to passportable ID.
Yes, portable ID.
Yes. The industry has to abandon the walled garden approach where every single bank acts as an isolated data vault. They must transition toward interoperable digital wallets where the user carries their verified credentials across the ecosystem seamlessly.
Right, the collect once, verify often idea, and the second shift.
The second shift is what we just touched on with the ZKPs, moving from identity verification to attribute verification.
Right, proving facts, not biographies.
Institutions need to stop demanding full biographies and start accepting mathematical proofs of specific, legally required facts.
Makes total sense. And the third shift.
This is perhaps the most challenging shift for traditional risk departments. It's moving from static identity to dynamic risk assessment.
Static to dynamic. What does that look like in practice?
Today, KYC is fundamentally a static paper form. Even if it's digital, it's static. It gets filed in a database and it slowly goes out of date until the next mandatory review cycle in a year or two.
Which is pretty useless for real-time risk.
Exactly. Tomorrow, KYC must become a real-time dynamic risk score computed via continuous decentralized inputs. It needs to be a living assessment of risk that updates instantaneously without violating the user's privacy.
That's a huge operational hurdle.
Yeah.
But let's look at the dark side of this for a minute.
Okay.
If we actually succeed in building a highly efficient global digital identity grid, even if it is based on advanced cryptography, how do we prevent this infrastructure from becoming the ultimate surveillance state tool?
It's the biggest fear people have, and rightly so.
Right. If every financial transaction, every login, and every physical access point is tied to a decentralized identifier, couldn't a malicious actor or an overreaching government map the entire grid and track citizens with terrifying precision?
That is the existential threat of digital identity. If it is built incorrectly, it becomes an instrument of absolute control.
So how do we stop that?
This is why the architecture must adhere to a strict set of design principles for freedom and privacy. In the technical literature, these are often referred to as the 7 no's.
The 7 no's.
And these aren't just suggestions, they are non-negotiable architectural mandates required to prevent a dystopian outcome.
Okay, let's group these to understand the engineering challenges behind them. The first block of these no's is focused purely on privacy and surveillance resistance.
Right.
They are no backdoor, no phone home, and no leaks. So let's break those down.
Well, no backdoor means exactly what it sounds like. There can be no hidden access, no master keys, and no golden tickets for law enforcement or government authorities.
The math has to be pure.
The cryptography must be absolute and unbreakable by design. If there's a backdoor for the good guys, the bad guys will find it.
Right. And what about no phone home?
This goes back to our discussion about the flaws of OAuth and Google logins. Issuers must be mathematically prevented from tracking when or where a credential is used. The wallet cannot phone home to the issuer.
Makes sense. And no leaks.
No leaks refers to network-level privacy. It is not enough to just encrypt the data. The actual transmission of the proofs across the network must be shielded from metadata analysis.
Ah, so someone watching the network traffic can't guess what you're doing.
Exactly. Network observers who might try to infer activity based on traffic patterns have to be blocked.
Okay, so that's the privacy block. The second block of the 7 no's is about resilience and ensuring open access.
Right.
These are no choke point, no dead zones, and no lockout. Start with no choke point.
No choke point guarantees censorship resistance. No single entity, not the original issuer, not the registry, not the government, and not the wallet provider, should have the technical capability to block you from presenting your credential to a willing verifier.
Your identity must be truly self-sovereign.
Exactly.
And no dead zones.
This dictates that the system must have offline capability. You should be able to prove your attributes via localized cryptographic handshakes, even if the cellular network goes down, or you are in a remote environment.
Like use the NFC on your phone or something.
Exactly. And then there's no lockout.
Right, which is huge because people lose their passwords all the time.
Yes. No lockout addresses the reality of human error. There must be resilient self-recovery mechanisms.
Like what?
Like social recovery using trusted contacts or multi-signature setups, so that if you drop your phone in a lake and lose your private keys, your digital identity isn't permanently erased from existence.
That would be a nightmare.
Okay.
Okay, and the final 7th principle is the security mandate we have been circling this entire episode.
No honeypot.
Right. By eliminating central servers that hold unencrypted, personally identifiable information, we fundamentally remove the financial incentive and the technical mechanism for mass data breaches.
Exactly. If there's no honeypot, there's nothing for the bears to steal.
Right, so the principles are philosophically sound.
And cryptographically achievable.
But applying these decentralized privacy-first mandates to the incredibly rigid, highly regulated, and deeply risk-averse world of global capital markets, I mean, that is an enormous challenge.
The friction between the tech and the regulators is massive.
But the quantifiable market upside is forcing institutions to navigate that friction, right?
Absolutely. The operational efficiency of decentralized KYC is undeniable. You remember those corporate onboarding times we talked about earlier? 21 to 30 days.
Up to 180 days sometimes.
Right. Early pilot programs utilizing verifiable credentials show those average onboarding times dropping down to just 5 to 8 days.
From a month down to a week.
Yes. And the actual human staff effort required to process a complex client drops from 12 hours of manual labor down to roughly 3 hours.
That is a massive cost saving.
And the impact on consumer-facing metrics is equally dramatic. When you replace forgotten passwords, clunky two-factor authentication, and blurry document uploads with seamless biometric-secured DD wallets.
Right, like just using Face ID to send a proof.
Exactly. Login and onboarding success rates jump from 55% to 92%.
Wow. And what are the fraud rates?
Most critically for the bottom line, synthetic identity fraud rates, which cost the industry billions, plummet from roughly 3.5% annually to under 1%.
Under 1%.
The return on investment is absolutely there. The numbers don't lie.
Okay, but capturing that ROI means colliding head-on with existing regulations. And the most glaring philosophical and legal conflict here is between the inherent immutable nature of blockchains and the European Union's GDPR.
Ah, yes, the GDPR paradox.
Right. Blockchains are designed so that data written to a public ledger can never be altered or deleted. It's permanent.
Yes.
But GDPR legally guarantees consumers the right to be forgotten. If a user demands a company delete their data, the company must comply.
By law.
Right. So if that data is on a public blockchain, compliance is technically impossible.
Yeah.
How does the industry engineer its way out of this paradox?
Well, if you design the system by writing raw data to a public chain, it is an unsolvable contradiction. You just can't do it.
So what's the workaround?
The resolution lies in adopting hybrid blockchain models. In a legally compliant decentralized identity system, you never, ever write personally identifiable information PII to a public blockchain.
Okay. So what goes on the blockchain?
And the public blockchain is used purely for cryptographic anchoring and auditability. It stores a cryptographic hash of the data, not the data itself.
Okay. And a hash being a one-way mathematical function. So the blockchain basically just holds a digital fingerprint, verifying that a specific credential was issued at a specific moment in time by a specific entity.
Exactly. It's just a fingerprint. The actual sensitive data, the PII, remains stored off-chain.
Where?
Either within the user's private digital wallet on their phone or on secure, private, GDPR-compliant networks managed by the issuer.
So how does the right to be forgotten work then?
If a user exercises their right to be forgotten, they simply delete the credential from their wallet, or the issuer severs the linkage in their off-chain database.
But the hash is still on the blockchain forever.
The cryptographic hash remains permanently on the public blockchain, yes. But without the underlying data to combine it with, that hash is mathematically meaningless. It is computationally impossible to reverse engineer the hash back into the user's name or address.
Oh, that's clever.
It is. This architecture ensures full GDPR compliance while still leveraging the immutability of the ledger to establish absolute trust.
Okay, but prioritizing privacy brings its own unique set of regulatory headaches, especially when we look at decentralized finance, or DeFi.
DeFi is the Wild West right now for regulators.
Right. Because the pseudonymous nature of DeFi, where users are identified only by these long strings of alphanumeric wallet addresses, creates massive vulnerabilities for illicit activity.
It's a huge blind spot for AML.
Yeah. If a bank doesn't actually know the true name of the person behind a wallet, how do they enforce anti-money laundering laws or comply with global sanctions?
This is exactly where regulatory bodies like the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, and the SEC are actively intervening. They recognize the innovation, but they are developing strict guidelines demanding that these decentralized systems incorporate robust compliance and kill switch mechanisms.
A kill switch.
Yes. The most critical technical requirement they are pushing for is called credential revocation.
Credential revocation. Okay, so let's walk through a scenario. My bank issues me a verifiable credential saying I am KYC cleared to trade.
Right.
But 6 months later, my risk profile changed dramatically. Say I suddenly pop up on an OFAC sanctions list.
Which happens.
The original issuer needs the ability to instantly deactivate my credential, even if it is sitting in my self-sovereign wallet.
Exactly. The system must allow institutions to maintain real-time access control without violating the no phone home privacy principle we talked about earlier.
How do you do both? How do you revoke it without tracking it?
It works through cryptographic revocation registries anchored on the ledger. If your legal status changes, the issuer simply updates the registry to reflect that the specific credential ID is no longer valid.
So the wallet doesn't know until it tries to use it.
Right. When you try to present a zero-knowledge proof to a new verifier, the verifier system checks the ledger. It sees the revocation status, the math fails, and the transaction is instantly blocked.
Wow.
It balances the user's need for privacy with the financial system's need for systemic security and legal compliance.
But implementing something like universal revocation registry requires a massive coordinated effort across the entire financial sector.
It does.
If JP Morgan builds its own proprietary DID wallet and Goldman Sachs builds its own proprietary ZKP algorithms,
Right.
and neither of them talk to the crypto exchanges, I mean, we are right back where we started. Fragmented, siloed, and wildly inefficient.
That is the big fear right now, a collective action failure.
We need open standards to make this work, not a new tech monopoly.
The risk of a collective action failure is very high, and this is exactly what initiatives like the proposed John Hancock Project are designed to solve.
The John Hancock Project, what is that?
The concept behind the John Hancock Project is to create a multi-stakeholder body that brings together competing technologists from the blockchain space, academic cryptographers, and civil liberties advocates.
To do what?
Their mandate is to draft open, universally auditable standards for DIDs, ZKPs, and credential revocation.
So it acts as a neutral arbiter.
Exactly.
It ensures that technology is built on open protocols, much like how the early internet exploded because it was built on shared open standards like TCP/IP and HTTP, rather than closed, proprietary corporate networks like AOL or CompuServe back in the day.
And standardizing these protocols is really the only way to appease the regulators. From a financial perspective, open standards allow regulators to create legal safe harbors.
Safe harbors.
Yes. If a bank utilizes a decentralized credential that is officially certified as compliant with these open standards, the regulators can grant them a safe harbor.
Meaning they won't get sued into oblivion.
Right. It shields the bank from massive enforcement actions if a fraudulent transaction somehow slips through the cryptography.
Which brings us to the ultimate climax of this deep dive, because it really all hinges on one vital question.
The big one.
Yeah. Every investor, every compliance officer, and every operator looking at this space must eventually ask this single punchy question. If a zero-knowledge proof derived from a decentralized identity credential turns out to be fraudulent, who holds the ultimate legal liability for the illicit transaction?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Is it the original issuer who verified the physical documents? Is it the user's wallet provider? Or is it the financial institution that accepted and verified the mathematical proof?
And that is the exact reason why this hasn't been adopted globally yet. Because until regulators provide explicit legal safe harbors detailing exactly where liability shifts in a decentralized network, major financial institutions will refuse to abandon their expensive centralized KYC silos.
So it's not a tech problem anymore.
Not at all. The technology is completely ready, the cryptography is mathematically sound, but the legal liability remains the ultimate bottleneck preventing mass adoption.
It always comes down to the lawyers.
Always.
Okay, so let's synthesize the 3 vital takeaways from our deep dive today for everyone listening. First, traditional KYC is a profoundly expensive, dangerous honeypot model that forces banks to hoard data. It fails to prevent fraud while constantly exposing consumers to massive data breaches. Second, the architecture of decentralized identity and zero-knowledge proofs offers a mathematical solution. It allows institutions to verify critical facts about a user without ever holding the underlying sensitive data.
Collect once, verify often.
Right. And third, the primary hurdle to transforming global finance isn't the technology. It is the desperate need for regulatory clarity around legal liability and the establishment of interoperable open standards.
Spot on. But before we go, I want to leave everyone with a final provocative concept to mull over.
Let's hear it.
What if the future of finance entirely decouples who you are from what you can do?
Decouples who you are from what you can do.
Yeah. Imagine a world where your functional identity, your verified attributes, your specific permissions, and your real-time risk scores completely replaces your foundational identity.
So they know my score, but not me.
Exactly. Imagine a reality where a major bank can perfectly trust your financial standing, verify your pristine credit history across multiple institutions using MPC, and instantly approve $1 million commercial loan while being mathematically blocked by cryptography from ever knowing your actual name.
Wow. It's a staggering thought. A financial system built on absolute mathematical trust and absolute cryptographic privacy simultaneously.
It's the future we're heading toward if we can get the regulations right.
Well, As always, please remember that the discussions on Talk Tickers are for informational purposes only and do not constitute financial, legal, or technological advice. We invite you to examine your own organization's KYC bottlenecks, look at the friction in your onboarding, and consider how these paradigm shifts might apply to your operations.
Highly recommend looking into your own systems.
Because if you don't start thinking about the transition to decentralized verification now, you'll be the one stuck building a brand new house every time you move, leaving your most valuable possessions unguarded in the past. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.